Hello, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. So good to be here with all of you, beautiful Portal to Ascension family. We are live on our YouTube right now. If you're catching the replay, today we have an amazing guest with us that has been on Portal to Ascension a couple times on some of our paid conferences, and then also we did one on crop circles. We did two with crop circles, and we did one on whales and dolphins on this channel as well. And this is my good friend Nadi. And you can check out her other content. That is, let me put her on split screen here so you can see her as we're talking. And you can check out her other content on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/portal to ascension. And I have been, just to kind of take a side note here before we get into this, I have been having internet connection issues. So I'm just going to check with Nadi really quick, make sure my quality is good. Nadi, how's it going?
So far, so good.
Okay, awesome. So today we are having the opportunity to go deep into Nadi's passion that is really flourishing to a whole other level. She's created courses on this content that she's going to be sharing as well in this presentation sometime. But today the topic is sacred geometry. And what did I call this? Sacred geometry, harmonics, and consciousness. And a little bit about Nadi. Nadi Hana is an inspiring instructor and presenter, sharing her knowledge about sacred geometry, advanced civilization, and consciousness through public presentations since 2015. She's a professional transition specialist, serving the expansion of human consciousness through the activation of a multidimensionality. Drawing on over a decade of work as a psychotherapist and a dedication to transformational growth, her life is of service to promoting unity consciousness. She hosts workshops, online courses, and private sessions exploring how technologies of advanced civilizations can support our individual and collective evolution. And today she's going to be presenting on sacred geometry, as I said, harmonics and consciousness. If you guys have any questions, okay, highly encouraged. If you have any questions at any point, we're live on New Realities and we're live on Portal to Ascension. Please leave them in the chat, the live chat, okay? Any questions, any comments, and let's have some interaction with this experience today, okay? So if you have them, I'll go ahead and be taking a look. I'll pass them on to Nadi, and we'll have her respond to them. But just my own personal experience with Nadi, known her for, I think, the last year now, maybe a little bit over, but we just connected in person just a few months ago in Sedona. And ever since then, she's become one of my favorite people. I really do love her so much. Such a beautiful soul, and just like an instant connection of friendship. And I didn't tell you this, Nadi, I was going to tell you this in the beginning, but a few months ago, you texted me and you said, I was taking a hike in the rock, somewhere in the Red Rocks. And you said, when you came back, you realized how important it is to fall in love with yourself. Remember that? Do you know?
Yeah.
I've been telling people that quote ever since. I've been saying my friend Nadi has been telling me this. But seriously, it's like, when I'm in a place where I'm reflecting, because I've been doing a lot of inner work lately and a lot of stuff's been coming up, that's like, I hear your voice saying that to me, like how important it is to be in love with yourself, and that's kind of my journey that I'm really on right now, is to really cultivate that love for myself. So, you're with me on many levels. I really love and appreciate you. Plus, you're such a great presenter. You have so much to share. So thank you for being here, Nadi.
Oh, thank you, Neil. Wow. I'm so touched. That's relating to another human at like the deepest level, right? That like self-love, that is so beautiful. I forgot. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. You ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Take us away. All right.
Cool. Well, that was a lovely introduction. I so appreciate the beautiful words and hosting this call, so that I can talk about my passion and purpose and functionality as a human. As you mentioned in my bio, it's like I am of service, to our personal and collective evolutionary process. I say that with humility. Hopefully I can show up that way. And one of the ways that I offer the service and show up is with sacred geometry and talking about it and hosting calls and classes to draw it. And it's interesting today. I have got about an hour of information. I've got a really fun slideshow. I'm going to go over a bunch of different shapes. But normally I'm hosting this information, I'm sharing this intelligence with the plan to draw it. That's my true love, is to draw the geometry, because this is a live practice. Geometry is a living being, and I'm going to talk so much about that. But I want to encourage everyone to consider drawing it. Hopefully there'll be a little bit of inspiration for you to go on and learn some more about it. But I definitely love to host and draw and play, and come check out my website and everything that I do, so we could get together and have some good activating fun. Because part of my interest, part of my curiosity, and part of what has compelled me in my personal journey is that at its core, the geometry is here to help us expand our consciousness. So most of my talk today is going to be guided towards an understanding that this geometry, that these shapes, that these harmonic proportions are here to help us realize our full potential. They can take us magically, like I'm gonna tell you how they do this. They can take us from a third dimension, this tiny little dimensional reality we've been told is what's happening, into a multidimensional consciousness. We can shift into a larger awareness of the all that is. We can expand into our true capacity with our psychic abilities, our subtle sensory systems, our telepathy, our interactivity, our interconnectivity. And the geometry can do all of that. I get a little bit excited. I'll try to calm down and breathe a little bit. So that's my main focus, is how the geometry can help us expand into our true potential. And I will weave that throughout the hour with a bunch of different examples. And I want to start with why sacred geometry is sacred, right? There's a lot of reasons, but that is usually the first question I get, is what makes it sacred? And my answer is usually twofold. One is that, as you begin to either draw or work with the geometry, meditate with it, talk with other people about geometry, you begin to align with the harmonics of the shapes. The proportions are so perfectly balanced, and the symmetry is fantastic, and your system begins to entrain with the geometry, with those beautiful harmonics. And it actually, brings you into a state of alignment as you work with them. You reflect that balance and that harmony. And so you can open, in that alignment, you can begin to open to your higher guidance, your higher intelligence that can then guide you into your expansion. That's what happened to me. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, but I started drawing it fairly obsessively, and it just compelled me and my expansion to where I was able to touch in on those sacred, beautiful God places within myself. So that's one answer to what makes sacred geometry sacred. The other answer is the collective experience, right? So we've got the personal activation and growth, and then we've got the collective connectivity, right? When you start to realize that there is geometry in everything, there's not anything in our reality that doesn't have a geometric pattern. And so when you start to see that universality and that interconnectedness, it begins to break down the illusion of separation. It begins to open your awareness to unity consciousness, to understanding that we are all connected, and understanding that there is infinite capacity for abundance and thriving, and it can really change your worldview. It is profound. It can change your relationship with yourself. It can change your relationship with the outside world, although we know there's no separation. But as above, so below. The geometry is all-encompassing to get you in touch with what is sacred, what is most meaningful, and what is the highest frequency of your potential. So I'm a huge fan, clearly, and I want to add that, times on this planet are not easy for a lot of us right now. There's a tremendous amount of density and fear being promoted. And right alongside it, there's also the equivalent of light and inspiration and high frequency transmissions, energies coming through. And so I believe it's more important now than ever to be choosing your modality, to be doing whatever your inner practice is in order to amplify your light, in order to balance out the density, right? So whatever practice you have, awesome, keep going, and maybe you could add geometry to the mix to bolster what you have. And so there's my nutshell about why sacred geometry is sacred, and also why it is kind of vital now to be activating our true potential. So let's see, where shall we go first? I think I want to tell you a little bit about what got me into all of this. I've been passionate about my own growth for my entire adult life. I've got 20 years of practicing different modalities, yoga, Reiki, different meditations. And it really led me to this practice. It's good to have a foundation. And I worked as a psychotherapist in a psychiatric inpatient unit for 10 years. 10 years ago. This was a very previous lifetime of mine. And that was an incredible experience, and it gave me a really great understanding of non-consensus reality, working with people going through psychotic episodes or, feeling suicidal and questioning reality. And the honor of going through that process gave me such a foundation for understanding different realms, but it was a little too fragmented for me, working in crisis, working in acute care and the mental health profession. So I wanted to leap into a more integrated, a more aligned place. So I absolutely leapt without any structure. I went into this void of identitylessness, and it was very uncomfortable. And at the same time, it's a place of infinite potential. So I leapt, and very soon after found the work of Nassim Haramein and unified physics, and through that, sacred geometry. And one of the things, a lot of people come to sacred geometry when they're in transition of some massive kind, because it gives you a predictable structure to anchor in. It's very grounding and slowly leads you into connectivity with yourself and your path. So it was showing me the way, and I share my journey in parts so that if it happens to you, I could perhaps normalize what is anomalous to most, interpretations of what reality should be like. Leap of faith into the unknown, creative, endeavors, following passions. These are the things that get us to a really rich life. So sacred geometry, I started drawing compulsively. I just wanted to be around it all the time. I wanted to talk with people. I started drawing it more and more. People were like, oh, you should have a show and put that stuff up. And drawing can really lead to massive expression. For example, Sri yantras and different geometries that need to be expressed. I'm going on about my own process. But art led to teaching. People wanted to learn about it, so I ended up hosting classes and calls, and I've been doing that for about 7 years. And here's the piece that I want to really make sure that you understand, is that the geometry can lead you into places that you didn't know were possible. And I was studying, and then I got very interested in crop circles that are fundamentally based in geometric patterns. And then studying crop circles led me to exploring the circle makers and how did the crop circles exist. And that took me into studying advanced civilizations and off-planet realities and my, the other aspects of me that are in other star systems, and light language being developed and interspecies communication and all sorts of things that I never would have imagined as I was working in a therapist on a psych unit. So know that geometry is a bit like a gateway drug, in that it starts off your alignment and then you follow on your true path. So all of that is to say that it changes lives. I want to get into some of the geometry very soon. But I've been teaching for, 7 some odd years, 7 or 8. And I've seen it change lives. I had one woman who came into a class saying that she was told that she could speak to her deceased husband through the geometry, and we got to the vector equilibrium and it started happening. And she got the shape tattooed on her body. She went off to study plant medicine in South America. So that's a little extreme, but it's profound. I want to overemphasize how much it could change your life, because it's hard to comprehend it from the beginning. But I have a woman in a class right now. She's been restructuring her brain after a traumatic brain injury with the geometry. So it's very functional, very applicable. We're going to look at some of the esoteric aspects of it, but we're talking about very practical day-to-day stuff. So I think that's it. Just be prepared. This information can shift things up a little bit. I hope I'm just planting seeds and that you will go forward and go forth and prosper, right? Go look into these things. This is such a brief overview, but I'm excited to share it with you. I've got a bit too much planned. I think I'm going to jam quite a bit into about an hour, and I'm going to touch on some of the fundamental shapes just to give you a little I don't want to say teaser, but a little highlight. We're going to look at the seed of life and the flower of life and our toroidal field and the vector equilibrium and Metatron's cube and a couple of polygons and the phi ratio. We're just going to do a little hit so that you can really get a sense of the patterns around us all the time. So we can really start to connect with this unseen world, this geometric, fundamental elements that brings us all together. So all of those geometries, and all in about 45 minutes. And there was one thought that I had. I'm probably going to forget it, but I'm going to pop in and out of the presentation. It's a ton of information, but I'm going to go into the slideshow, even though, man, it was something really important that I was going to say. Had to do with the fundamental principles, but it'll come out in the talk. So I'm going to hop into the screen share here. Hopefully I've got this lined up. And not quite. There it is. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. Hopefully that's going to work. I'm going to jump in, and I'm thinking Neil will tell me if it's not. So maybe this was what I was going to say. What we're talking about is moving from an understanding of the third dimensional material world as this dense construct. We're moving into the understanding of an energetic reality, that everything is frequency and everything is vibrational. And we're shifting. I'm so distracted by this thought that keeps popping in and out that wants to be expressed, so it'll come out. We're shifting into a new kind of reality, one that can match anywhere you want to go. And this is the thought here. Whether you're familiar, really familiar with sacred geometry, or you're just starting, this information can match you wherever you are, because it's always evolving and reflecting our consciousness. It's going to show you the next level. Even if you've seen the seed of life 1,000 times, it's never the same shape twice. Isn't that awesome? That is so cool. So glad I remembered to say that. So we're talking about vibration, and that vibration can be described as frequency, and that frequency can be expressed as numbers, and that numbers can be perceived and organized as forms and patterns. So we are giving shape, we're giving finite shapes to the infinite intelligence and the infinite energy in the universe. This geometry is how we can understand our reality better. And like I said, I do want to prepare you that this information can blow your mind. It can also just, come and go, and perhaps plant a seed quietly and then maybe show up in the dream time. But just know we've got some good stuff lined up. I want to basically bring our attention to the patterns that we already know. All of the natural worlds and all of the man-made worlds, they all have these harmonic shapes within them. And we're going to start by bringing our attention to the phi spiral, the phi ratio, one of the most fundamental patterns that is everywhere in nature. And I'm really just bringing to the forefront of your awareness things that you recognize but take for granted in this reality. And the more you begin to bring the shapes and the geometry and this phi spiral into your reality, the more connected you are with your external world and with your internal world. And that's the goal, again, is that expanded awareness of your reality and your potential. And this infinite spiraling pattern is so beautiful. This is one of the more predominant shapes. We see it on large scale, we see it on galactic scale, and then we also see it on tiny, tiny scales all the way down to our DNA. I'm going to tell you about the ratio in just a minute, but this proportion is basically what makes up our physical body. We are made of this harmonic ratio, and it's a natural expression of space multiplying itself and dividing itself, right? So there's a certain ratio where it's the two segments adding onto each other to form a third segment, or subtracting and dividing, right? And you can expand infinitely out and infinitely in with this shape. It's amazing, and we're just blowing past it so quickly, but I want you to have an understanding that this shape is available to us to remind us of the balance also between the divine masculine and divine feminine principles, because you can see that beautiful curving divine ratio is the representation of the divine feminine, the curving, flowing, creative expression that is also contained and supported and held by this divine masculine, structured, linear, mathematic progression. So this curvature of space has a mathematic representation, a numerologic representation, and you can see the equation here. It's simply that two integers add when the shape is expanding. They add together to form the third integer, right? So 1 and 2 is 3, and 3 and 5 is 8, and 8 and 5 is 13, and onward to infinity, right? And this is the only proportion, this is the only shape that only needs two integers. Everything else, every other equation has to add something. So that creates that harmony and that inner relationship to itself. Now this slide fascinates me. I discovered this a little while ago and it just blew my mind. So here you've got basically just the written out expression of the phi ratio. Well, Fibonacci sequence, sorry. And so you can see the 1 and 2 is 3, and 2 and 3 is 5. Onward we go up to 13, 21, 34. So that's how we normally read an equation, right? Left to right. Now here's one of the fun things, is that you can read this equation down the last column. 2 and 3 is 5, 5 and 8 is 13, 21 and 34 is 55, and onward, right? So that's kind of extraordinary. Now it gets better. You can read the equation down on the first column as well. 5 and 8 is 13, and 21 and 34 onward on that first column. But here's the kicker. You can also read it down on the second column, right? So we've got this equation that can be read across from left to right and down on each 3 column. And I just want to say, do you get that? If you pause with that for a moment, there's this, potential understanding of a greater intelligence, a divine orchestration that is expressed through mathematics, right? That equation is basically source consciousness manifesting in numbers, in geometry, in mathematics. So I want to just pause with this because it's really extraordinary, and there's so many folks doing really great, fascinating art and videos and sharing information about the power of numbers and the numerology and the sequencing in the shapes. But we're going to get back to how that shape shows up in our world. We've got our DNA that is based and built on the phi ratio, that natural harmonic. It's seen in so many places. As you can see, it's the proportion of our body. It's in the shape of our brain. I'm going to take a breath. I get really excited. So just to bring your awareness to one of the fundamental patterns. Then we move into the material world, the manifest world, through arts, through architecture, through every kind of expression you could imagine. There is no discipline that is not connected to the geometry, right? So whether it's any kind of enduring iconography, we're going to see in a little bit how cultures integrate geometry into their wisdom traditions. It's related to music in its full spectrum and chord progression. And, you know, you've got cosmology and mathematics and physics and music and art and architecture. There's just nothing that isn't directly related and founded in these geometric principles. So I want to briefly mention also that this ratio that I keep referencing is one segment. The ratio is one segment to 1.618, right? So it's not 1 to 2 in a ratio. It's one segment to 1.618. And that will spiral on infinitely, either expanding or contracting. But because it's not 1 to 2, it will repeat itself, and it shows up in other geometries. That ratio of 1 to 1.618 connects this geometry with other shapes, right? So we've got the phi as fundamental, and then we're going to move in and see the relationship to the pentagon and the pentagram, right? So the phi ratio being one segment to 1.618, it is everywhere in every shape, right? It's in the pentagon, it's in the pentagram, and each segment is related, right? Each segment has this harmonic, which, you know, creates this natural world of so many expressions. I'm getting ahead of myself in my mind, so I'm going to stick with the mathematics of the shape and how the math of the phi relates directly to the math of the pentagon and the pentagram. And I am simply going to give a shout out to math. It is not my area by any means, but if you are a mathematician or an engineer, I just want to give a shout out to the fact that there is so much fascinating mathematics in these shapes, and it's an entire area of study. I wish I knew more about it. If you geek out on that kind of thing, just reach out to me and help me learn a little bit about the math, because it's endlessly fascinating, but I don't feel competent in that area. Just gotta name it. But we're looking at the shapes that show up everywhere in our reality, right? So we've got the phi showing up everywhere, and then we've got the relationship of the phi to the pentagon and the pentagram. And then you start to notice, oh, you know, everything has that geometric pattern, and you start to connect all of the geometries. And as you bring your awareness to the natural world, it's connecting again on very, very subtle levels. This isn't anything that your conscious mind is going to really register, but you are bringing the subconscious reality, which Bruce Lipton tells us is 95% of our waking reality is the subconscious mind, and 5% is the conscious mind. And so the geometry helps us access the subconscious mind and bring it more into our conscious awareness. And that gives us more control. It gives us more connection to ourselves and to the collective consciousness. The other thing is that the geometry is so powerful that it has been used to influence our reality. And I'm going to come out of the screen share just for a second. I don't ever go into the negative aspects of the geometry and how it's been used to manipulate our psyche quite destructively. I focus on the uplifting, the empowering and the inspiring aspects of the geometry, because that's where our true potential and God-like capacities exists, right? But the geometry is so powerful that it has been used to influence our collective psyche. So part of studying the geometry is a reclaiming. It's a step towards sovereignty to begin to recognize when it's being used for or against us, and you can only recognize it when you start to tune in. So what we're looking at is how geometry has been used, kind of going unseen under the radar for a while in our subconscious, and used for marketing, used to influence us, used to convince us that things are in our best interest when perhaps they aren't. And here's some examples. This is from Adam Apollo. He's one of the amazing humans out there that has a lot of inspiring information about sacred geometry. I highly recommend you check him out. But this is an example of how some of the shapes, we've got the archetypal wings, and we've got the pentagon and pentagram, as you can see, used in a couple of different examples. Then also the shape of the Vesica Pisces, right? This is two primal circles representing this, that's the primal part, this incredible union of divine masculine, divine feminine, different principles in the cosmos coming together to birth true potential, to birth infinite intelligence and awareness. And this was originally used as, or represented a divine feminine energy, right? This union birthing a third, another meaningful. What's the word I want to look for? The union birthing a new potential, a new portal, this womb-like opening into a new reality. And then the shape was used and slightly co-opted to represent patriarchal religions, cultures, and very subtly shifting the understanding of that Vesica Pisces from this feminine, birthing, womb-like shape into a shape that subtly can influence our interpretation of reality, from a predominantly feminine, matriarchal reality back way back in civilizations into a predominantly left brain structured. I don't want to get too, I don't want to play favorites here, but the geometry has been used to align us with certain frequencies. And some of the, mainstream media, as well as mystery schools and ancient traditions, have known about the power and have used the geometry to craft reality, to influence. So overview, right, of the Vesica Pisces and where you can see it and where you can find it. And you can see the relationship of that basic shape with these two circles, creating the center point, the center portal there, and how it's related to the pentagon, and how you can find the pentagon in the proportions of the Vesica. But then you can also see one of the basic building blocks in our reality, the hexagon, right? So we've got phi ratio, pentagon, Vesica Pisces, and the hexagon, which is fundamentally woven throughout our reality and our psyche and our consciousness. It is in molecular structures, it is in subatomic particles, it is the most efficient way of packing information, right? We have some of the more sophisticated beings on our planet that know to use this structure and this geometry to contain the the biology, the intelligence, and the wisdom all in one shape, right? That can be packed perfectly and utilize space so efficiently. We're going to look at Metatron's cube in a little bit, and we'll see the relationship of the hexagon to Metatron's cube and really start to understand the relationship of some of these polygons, some of these basic patterns, pentagons, heptagons, octagons, and pentagons. I meant hexagons on there. They're all of service to the structure of our universe. And I'm kind of saying the same thing again and again because I want to really hit home the idea that this geometry is everywhere and it's serving us. And the more we can understand the service that it provides, right, the link that it provides to our consciousness, the more we can build a relationship with our material world, with the natural world, with the underlying fields of intelligence, right? The geometry is everywhere, and some examples, off-planet examples and on-planet, are the hexagon in the, I think that's the North Pole of Saturn. Tons and tons of places that you wouldn't necessarily think to find a hexagon are right in front of us. And I mentioned earlier the crop circles and my fascination with them. Again, that is a much larger conversation, but there is a reality to the geometry that conveys transmissions and intelligence. And I just wanted to show you a couple of hexagonal patterns, six-fold geometries, and suggest that perhaps these geometries have been given to us, right? That perhaps there is that off-planet greater intelligence that has shared this information with humanity, for our liberation, for our, I don't want to use a negative word there, but it has been purposefully used on all spectrums of energetic influence. And that leads us into the hexagonal shape of the seed of life, right? So that's part of the reason we want to study the underlying shapes to get to the sacred geometry, even though it's all sacred. But the hexagon, the six-sided geometry, is in essence the pattern for the seed of life, right? You can see these 6 segments. And it's called the seed of life because it is literally like the germ of life. It is the Genesis pattern. You can get every single pattern of sacred geometry. You can get the fundamental fabric of space-time out of this shape when you draw it. And it can lead you to the flower of life, which we're going to look at in a second. But all of the patterns we're going to look at now come from the seed of life, come from that basic hexagonal pattern. And so you start with the basics, and then you expand into this larger understanding that every culture references or utilizes sacred geometry in some way, shape, or form. Lots of times, here's a 3D version of the flower of life in the under the Fu dog paw that guards the Forbidden City in Beijing, in the wisdom temples, where this culture holds its highest intelligence and history, is guarded by a flower of life, right? And you see this everywhere. This is not just in Beijing. This is very, very common to see the representation of the geometry in a 3D form in sacred sites. And everywhere. This is India and Bulgaria and China and Turkey and Egypt. It goes on to find this connectivity that is beyond individual expression. We're talking about global scale, and then we're talking about sort of beyond global scale as well. And you've got the flower of life, you've got also the star tetrahedron, which gets us into religious iconography of the Merkaba, and I'm going to look at that in a little bit with the Metatron's cube. But the invitation is to look at, how is this geometry everywhere? How did that happen, right? It's interesting, to say the least. And this is another example. I love this example in the Osirian temple in Abydos, Egypt, right? This is a temple without hieroglyphs. This is a, granite stone temple with only 3 images. The flower of life apparently holographically burned into the granite, right? And we have the technology in places here now, but we, as humans, did not back then. So the invitation is really, what is the larger picture? Where is this coming from? How is this information given to us, or how did we discover it? And lastly, we are the geometry, right? So we've got this global collective scale, but then we've also got in our physiology, right? We've got this single cell reproduction. As the cells divide, they mirror our very biology and the essence of when we're born and first created. So you've got the seed of life replicating the cell division in our bodies that goes on to the 64 and the division of cells. And then it, explodes exponentially. But here you've got the geometry showing us and mirroring back our very biology. So you've got these fundamental patterns, the phi, pentagon, the hexagon, into the patterns of sacred geometry, which are found all over the world, off planet as well, and that mirror our biology. So that's again, this piece of sacredness is it's connected to us, it's connected to everything, and that's part of what brings everything together. So I'm going to go on to show you a couple of examples of how it's a reflection of us and our biology and our energetic systems. We're going to shift into our energy bodies. We're going to shift into understanding ourselves as an electromagnetic being, and that there's actually a geometry that reflects that, and it's called our toroidal field. And it's one of the more fun shapes to draw, right? This is the seed of life basically doubled up on itself. Right, so you get superimposed 2 seeds of life, and this is also called the sunflower. If we had a 6-fold geometry in the hexagon, we now have a 12-fold geometry in the toroidal field, right? And right here, it's just a 2D shape, right? And you can shift it. This is the 2D shape there that's taken that center circle off, right? And when you do that, you begin to get a little bit of the dimensionality, right? That this is maybe more alive than just the 2D on the piece of paper. And that's part of what I want to keep encouraging everyone to consider, is that we're dealing with 2-dimensional shapes, but we're really dealing with the representation of the 3rd dimension, and then, of course, beyond into multiple dimensions. But this is the geometry of our electromagnetic field, right? This is the energy body. This is the pulsing energetic reality of everything. Our heart has an electromagnetic field, our body, our planet, our galaxy. And if you begin to tap into this geometry, you also begin to tap into your own electromagnetic field. You begin to connect with the geometry of your presence, of your energy, of your subtle systems. So we're drawing this 2D shape, but you're literally connecting with your energetic essence. And when you start to become aware of your own field, then you can understand more how you're interfacing with other fields. You can learn to read someone's electromagnetics. Ooh, do I want to go towards that? Do I want to stay and maintain my own system? It's very empowering to understand your field. And of course, it's represented in crop circles. I had to throw that in there. But this is very, very, high-level stuff that's boiled down for us into 2-dimensional shapes. And this is an interesting segue into Metatron's cube. I'm going to come out for a second. But the thing of it is we've got these basic shapes that we're drawing. And what I want to invite you to consider is that even though we're here on this material realm, it is actually activating your subtle realms. I'm clearly biased towards the idea of drawing it. So working with it, meditating with it, anything that resonates for you, getting a tattoo, it's all activating the other realms, the non-physical, the non-linear, into the subtle, energetic, and sensory and psychic, the true places of intelligence for us. And the multidimensional reality of us, that we've been a little cut off from. So I've had a bunch of people come into geometry classes saying things like, I'm seeing the geometry in front of me, like it's totally alive. What do I do? And we start drawing and it anchors the energy. Point being, these are alive. The geometry is spinning and moving and bouncing in and out of dimensional realities, and it's a real shift in consciousness to interpret the pattern on the paper to understanding that it is representing our physical reality. But I have a lot of people come in with, having had amazing psychedelic trips that have seen the veil thinned, and they're like, I understand the field of geometric intelligence. And then you start to draw it, and it's point being, I guess I'm trying to say it's really real, and you can kind of only experience it for yourself, but it's real. I don't know how else, I really want to help that bridge of understanding all of this esoteric information to the, this silly 3rd-dimensional reality that we see in front of us. I'm going to segue into Metatron's cube, and I want to keep an eye on time. blazing right through this. So we've got 2 more shapes. We've got Metatron's cube, and hopefully we're not exhausted enough to take a peek at the vector equilibrium, because it's a spectacular shape. But for now, Metatron's cube. And this is one of the more fundamental, beautiful shapes. It is very, very easy to draw. It looks complicated, and it is, but it's not. So Metatron's cube is related to the flower of life in a very direct way. And I'm going to give you this sequence so that you can understand, why we skip right into this shape. We're not actually skipping. It's the next expression in the sacred geometry, in the seed of life, in the flower of life. So you can see up here the seed, and there are actually many expressions, many different shapes that are called the flower of life. And so up here we've got the flower. In the 3-dimensional form, it's called the egg of life. And you can also see up here that this shape is referred to as the flower of life, as is this one, as is this one. Now, again, with sacred geometry representing our biological process, right? This version of the flower of life is encased in something called the zona pellucida, which is actually the Latin word for the cell membrane that surrounds our cells and keeps all of the information and intelligence of our physiological process contained, right? So this zona pellucida also contains the information in the flower of life. It also cuts it off, right? So if you're working with this shape, it can, you're not having the full experience of the expressed flower, right? And this is actually where all of the information can be revealed and accessed when you open up this pattern, because you find the 13 circles that create what's called the fruit of life. So only in the expressed flower of life can you find this shape of the 13 circles. And that's how you get Metatron's cube, is you're connecting all of these circles with the lines. And in those lines, you can find 5 fundamental shapes. And that, in part, is why, I can't say that that's why sacred geometry is so powerful. But these 5 shapes are part of why sacred geometry is extraordinary, because these 5 shapes represent the 5 elements of our material world. So these are called the Platonic solids, and these are the only 5 shapes that adhere to 3 criteria, right? They are, all of the faces on the geometry are the same. All of the angles, all of the interior angles are the same. And then if you were to place the shape in a circle, it would touch equidistantly from point to point in the circle. So these are indicative of very, very high harmonics, and they are also representing the 5 elements of our material world. So you've got the tetrahedron is the representation of fire. You've got the octahedron represents the element of air. The hexahedron, or the cube, represents the element of earth. The icosahedron represents the element of water, and the dodecahedron represents the element of ether. And I don't want to be biased, but I am, in that I really love the dodecahedron. Mostly it's compensatory, right? We were mostly raised, mostly exposed to the 4 elements of, fire, air, earth, and water, and we were not made aware of the dodecahedron and of the element of space, of ether, energy, prana, chi. This is 99.99999% of our reality is made up of space, of ether, of energy. And we've been encouraged to focus on the 0.00001%, which is the material world and is represented by these 4 elements. So I feel like I'm kind of catching up by studying, the ether and bringing it more into my consciousness, right? So these solids, the thing about them is that when you are working with these shapes, you're drawing the tetrahedron, you're drawing the dodecahedron, you're gazing with the icosahedron. Again, you're bringing to life these 5 elements within your system. You are compensating for the absence of being able to access energy and chi within yourself. Maybe you were blessed enough to have that training. But learning about the dodecahedron, learning about the elements, brings the energy of those elements alive in your system. It begins to connect you with the essence of space and frequency, and it begins to take your mind from the material world into the immaterial, into the energetics, and into the subtle elemental realms. And it harmonizes your system. Focusing and learning about all of these patterns is harmonizing the parts of us that have been fragmented, right? So these are how the 5 platonic solids fit into the shape of Metatron's cube. You can see the tetrahedron, the cube, the dodecahedron, and the octahedron, and the icosahedron. Super fun, easy to draw. And then we sneak a 6th one in here, which is 2 tetrahedrons overlaid on top of each other. And that creates the star tetrahedron, right? Which is also known as the Merkaba, or our light body. It is our mechanism for actually traveling through the universe and dissolving our material body, letting go of our spacesuits. When you begin to understand how to work with this technology, we have these Merkabas. We are light bodies. And let's see, so Merkaba. So Mer is light, and Ka is spirit, and Ba is body. So we're talking about the spirit and energy body, and how to develop the technique of connecting with your essence, with your energy, with this element of space and frequency within yourself that we have not been told, right? So working with the Merkaba, working with your star tetrahedron, your light body, and sacred geometry leads you into realms of, unity consciousness, of understanding that we all have a Merkaba, we all have a toroidal field, we all have these geometries that are alive and representing our life force, our energy, and Drimvalo Melchizedek was one of the, pioneers of sharing some of the Melchizedek and Metatron intelligence, and giving us how to work with the technology of the star tetrahedron and our Merkaba to, elevate our consciousness, to clear off some of the programming that has created a density in our system. Highly recommend looking into his Flower of Life information. And of course, just to give you the example again of the geometries being found in crop circle and larger modes of communication. So again, this is helping us dissolve material reality. This is getting us in touch with our energy body, and studying and working with these different geometries with the platonic solids. They get us in touch. It's our gateway. It's how our little psyches can access this information. Meditation on these shapes, drawing them, finding frequency in everything. Lastly, why is it called Metatron's cube, right? So there's a ton of information about this. This is the briefest overview that I can give you. And Metatron was one of the, the history tradition about Metatron is that he was one of the archangels that had an incarnate physical body, lifetime. So he was the being known as Enoch in the Bible, who was known as the scribe and the record keeper of all things important. And he basically ascended and then got the very important job in heaven, or, whatever these arcane terminologies, bear with me in the languaging, but became the scribe in higher realms as well. That's what I wanted to say, higher realms. And he is the keeper of the Akashic records, right? This is the Metatron's cube. Archangel Metatron holds the intelligence of everything that has ever happened, will ever happen, and is happening. And that is mind-blowing for us in our little dimensional reality that has been bound by the construct of time. This information gets you into the larger timelessness, the simultaneity, all of the information that is available to you to make choices about your life and choose timelines and choose different frequencies. When you're working with Metatron, you are actually working with that intelligence. This is the wisdom traditions of working with Thoth, who was also the scribe and kept the information of humanity's evolution. No, nothing small here. I think I'm coming out before I go into the vector equilibrium, but this is just to show you that there is so much in working with these shapes. Okay, one last piece on the dodecahedron. It's hidden in plain sight, right? You know, back to the phi ratio, back to the pentagons and heptagons. It's everywhere. And the more you begin to bring your awareness, the more you are encouraging your own expansion. So in the movie Contact, I think this was like in the late 90s. This is one of my favorite movies. They receive information, you know, Jodie Foster receives information from advanced civilizations off planet. They decode the information and they build a time travel device, right? This device helps her instantly portal to another reality in, you know, split second. And it's encased in a dodecahedron. That is no accident. There is, you know, disclosure happening in mainstream media everywhere. And I just wanted to give this as an example to, you know, wow, there's something going on that we are perhaps not privy to. The last piece I want to share about why the dodecahedron is important is, you know, we saw the example of the inner star tetrahedron, the inner geometry that can liberate us. Hang on a second, I just want to come out. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a minute. The thing about the Metatron's cube is, you know, it's as with every sacred geometry, there is this essence of, you know, as above, so below, as within, so reflected in the collective. So you've got the Merkaba, you've got the inner aspect of the geometry, but we've also got this understanding that, you know, when you look at the element of ether, when you start to look at space and the vast majority of our reality, you're tapping into invisible realms of infinite energy, and that could then reshape, restructure, completely overhaul this paradigm that we live in of scarcity and fear and limited access, right? We could shift, you know, by studying the dodecahedron, by studying this element of earth and prana and chi, you know, all of the wisdom traditions, they knew this aspect, this fundamental aspect. By beginning to bring your consciousness to the element of space, you access energy within and you access the energy of the cosmos. And that's a lot of what, you know, free energy devices and technology is actually harnessing. They are harnessing the energy in space-time. So really quickly, this always just deserves mention. We've, you know, if you could somehow compact all of the energy in the universe, right? Pulsars, quasars, galaxies, just black holes, everything. If you could condense it down to the shape of a cubic centimeter of space, right? Shape of a sugar cube, right? Just that size. You would have, it would be like the density of the energy in there would surpass all of the entire energy in our universe, right? And that has to do with how energy becomes more dense and potent as it is packed, right? This is big physics. I'm just giving you an example of how much energy is in a cubic centimeter of space, right? We have more energy than in the entire universe in a cubic centimeter that we could harness and literally change our entire paradigm. We could have, you know, infinite sources of energy. We could have infinite potential that would then shake up and change this entire reality, you know, from scarcity into abundance and infinite supply for everyone. So you can see this stuff was kind of, you know, kept from us. This is really, really important information that is paradigm shifting. And now it's coming out. You know, this was the stuff of mystery schools that wasn't shared because it could be so radically transformational. And just to remind you, again, going back to if we're talking about space, if we're talking about things that have seemed empty before, things that have, you know, the invisible realms made visible, we are talking about two-dimensional geometries that are actually three-dimensional, that are actually energetically alive and can be harnessed to shape our worldview, to change our entire reality. And so I'm going to come back to the vector equilibrium just to close us out. I know, just hopefully you're understanding the infinite potential of the geometry, right? Like, I have been working with this for almost a decade. I will be working with it for the rest of my life because it contains everything. It's infinite potential, and it's always reflecting back the consciousness of where you are. So like, if you're just starting, then you can get a certain amount out of it, right? And then if you've been studying it or working with it, and even if you're like a complete professional and seasoned veteran of geometry, it's never-endingly uplifting and expansive because it's going to match you and take you to the next level. So all of this is to say, studying these shapes, understanding the fundamental energetic principles, the fundamental shapes, the natural world, the elements. A lot of this is woven into many, many traditions. A lot of this is not new information. It's just taking you and inviting you to go to the next level of your studies. Maybe add geometry to whatever it is that you study, whether it's ancient Egypt or Celtic magic or anything. Geometry can give you a boost, and it's going to take you to the next level. I promise you that. So lastly, take a nice breath. Here we go into the closing geometry, which is so exciting. I thought maybe I would end with Metatron's cube because it's just such a crowd pleaser. It's so fun, and I do want to invite you to come draw it with me. I love it. I had to give a shout out to the vector equilibrium. Now, this is slightly, it's a little bit more complex, so just step back, take in the energy of the shape. The details will just, come and go, and you will get the perfect amount of information. And don't worry about remembering any of it. It's transmitting, and the geometry is weaving its way into your psyche. But I really had to just do it tiny mention because I love it so much, and because it's an extraordinary shape. It is found in the flower of life, right? So here you've got the 2D version, quote unquote 2D, and then here's the 3-dimensional version of the flower of life and the spheres and how it comes alive into the material world. It has this beautiful spherical pattern, right? 64 star tetrahedron, the vector equilibrium, all these big words, I'm sorry. So the vector equilibrium is a shape found within the flower of life. This is a 3D version of the flower of life, and it has bones, right? It has an internal structure called the 64 star tetrahedrons, right? So this is a fractalizing, scalable geometry, meaning you've got the star tetrahedron that we talked about, right? You've got an upward facing triangle and a downward facing triangle, quote unquote. These are tetrahedrons. And you have one on the outside of this geometry, you have one on the inside of this geometry, and you also have this remarkable shape called the vector equilibrium. So I'm going to show you how you get to the vector equilibrium within this shape. This is a video clip from one of Nassim Haramein's videos. He's showing you how you can get the star tetrahedron by unpacking some of the geometries, right? Great. So if you take the tetrahedral structures off, you are left with this perfectly balanced geometry. It is called the vector equilibrium. It is also called the cube octahedron, and it is fundamental because it is the only shape that has perfectly balanced and equal lines, equal vectors, right? So the vector equilibrium, the only shape in the universe that has equal proportions, and that keeps it at a completely perfectly sustained frequency, right? Like it can oscillate and maintain a perfect state of equilibrium. And what that leads to is this point here, and that is a point of singularity. And this is the shape where physics and metaphysics meet. This is the still point of our energy body. This is the still point of this is referred to as a black hole, right? This is the energetics, the infinite capacity. This is what we're working with when we're harnessing free energy devices, free energy technology. I know we don't necessarily, I think we call it infinite energy sources, not necessarily free, but it is the place of infinite potential, and where physics and metaphysics meet, right? This is the place where we're harnessing energy. This is the focus. This is where all of the wisdom traditions and all of the meditative practices get us to that still point within, with that infinite peace and that balance, by harnessing your internal technology. We're talking technology that can support civilizations, and we're talking technology that can support our individual development and thriving, and all of this can advance our understanding of reality. It can advance our true nature. It can lead to our expansion, both independently and collectively. And what we're talking about is literally I don't want to say salvation. I don't want to say, I don't want to be too dire, but there's big things at stake. And the geometry and meditating with it can really activate your own intelligence. It can activate your connection to the collective intelligence and this geometric field. And I am a huge advocate. That is just such a redundant statement at this point. But I want to thank you for going on this journey with me, and I definitely love to bring people along for the ride and talk more about it. I host calls, and Neil, I'm going to see if you're around as I'm wrapping up here. I host calls and classes on a whole wide variety of subjects. I named a few of them. Drawing the geometry, crop circles, light language, whales and dolphins, advanced civilizations, ET, human hybridization programs, just anything. My hope is that I can hold a wide spectrum and welcome you to feel comfortable in exploring everything that you're interested in. My background in mental health, I can't help but default to a support system of wanting to encourage all of us to find our full expression, to step into ourselves, because we have to do that now. Now is the time. The time was a little while ago, but now it's really fundamental. So Neil, can I just finish up and show my course that I developed? Yeah?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So really briefly, I love all of this so much that I've wanted to do an online course for a long time, and I recently got it together, and you can find it on Jenna Layden's, it's everywhere, Star Family Wisdom website, right? She is a wonderful human who has organized a system of connecting with your star origins, and we have collaborated for a long time. She's doing a podcast series with a beautiful human, Sinead Willihan, just introducing and interviewing really, really amazing people. And she wanted to have geometry represented on the website, so I developed this course. And I don't want that to happen, but it's there's my galactic representation there in full force. It's an opportunity to have an evergreen resource that you can go back and revisit the drawings. You can visit. I have 8 different courses, and they cover much of what I covered today, which is the seed of life, Metatron's cube, drawing the Dodecahedron. I go into all of the elements of how to draw, as well as the information behind the drawing, like why it's significant. Everything I've been talking about today. And flower of life, vector equilibrium. I didn't go into the tesseract today, which is an extraordinary 8-fold geometry and is literally the geometry of time travel. But we go into polygons and occult wisdom, and all of the things that I covered now. And it's really fun. We've got Jenna actually just came up with a an offering that you can get special promo codes of, if you use the promo code of geometry, you can get really big discounts on some of the courses, in bundles individually, and then also for the whole package. So the courses are so fun. It's as interactive as you could get. I give you PDFs, sequencing the geometry, so you can go back and look at the steps step by step. You'll also have the video to refer back to, and then also just reach out to me, because I love doing one-on-one sessions and exploring how the geometry can augment your practice, your spirituality, your creativity, because it's woven into everything. It's always applicable. So Neil, that's my deal. Hope hope that was beneficial.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Nadi. Yeah, have you seen the show Loki?
With like the Avengers Loki?
Yeah, the TV show.
No, a TV show? No, I don't have the TV around,
Yeah.
so I didn't know about it.
Okay, so in there, it's that whole series is about the fact that they were messing with time, right?
Uh-huh.
And then somebody went back in time and changed something up, and then there's this time police that go and basically come in, like, correct the timeline, and they're using a tesseract the whole time in order to go through time and everything. It's pretty interesting.
It's really, you can find it a lot in the Avengers. I do happen to be an Avengers fan. And, we're talking like A Wrinkle in Time, right? The first line in the book is the Tesseract is real. So, when you start to play with the constructs of time, then you're really bending some reality and making new potentials for yourself. So.
Yeah. And Pythagoras was involved in Tesseract geometry too, right? Are you familiar with that?
All the way back and even farther. Yeah. What's your familiarity with that?
Well, so when I was doing Pythagoras presentation, I was kind of all over the place with where he got his information from, more than the mathematics of what he meant with it. So it was more about how he got this information, because, a lot of people give him credit for things that he found elsewhere. So that was kind of my focus on it all. But yeah, I'm just interested more in just, as we understand this geometry, what are the potentials in the technology we can create,
Yep, exactly. I mean, I love all of the things that you do so much, the specials and your downloads and everything that you share. And I just want to take a minute to really thank you for everything that you're doing. Your channel hosts information that can match anybody where it's at, and it's great for newcomers. And I hope that this has been a lovely invitation, but your work and your presentations, I've talked to so many people that your work has changed their lives. They're like, oh my God, I saw this thing on Portal of Ascension and my mind is blown. So thank you so much for what you do and putting yourself out there. I know you work a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's amazing that people are connecting with you, saying that. That really makes me feel good, But we do have some questions. So do you want to take a couple right here?
I do. Also, I put the link to Star Family Wisdom in the chat. I don't know if you can bump it over to the YouTube channel, but I also, my website just for folks is Galactic Rose Geometry, and that's also the name of my YouTube channel. And I've got a bunch of interviews with really amazing people. And on my website, you can find how to reach me and have classes and all of that.
All right, so we have a lot of people tuned in. We have over 110 on both New Realities and Portal to Ascension. So lots of amazing comments.
Cool. Hi, everybody. Yeah. Awesome. That's so great.
And everybody, I just posted Star Family Wisdom, the geometry course with Nadi, and I see a lot of you are really loving this. So if you want to, support Nadi, but also to support yourself and going deeper into this awareness, click that. Whether you go there and are a part of the course or not, or just go to Star Family Wisdom, Portal to Ascension, Star Family have been doing things together now and sponsoring each other, helping each other out, collaborating, and really up-leveling our platforms. So do check out the website regardless. And I'm going to read a couple of comments for you, Nadi, and then we'll get into a couple of questions here.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Thank you so much. It really opened an old love up for me again. So much love to you. And Ron says, I have been really interested in learning more about Metatron's cube and the Flower of Life. Wonderful presentation.
Wow, awesome. I'm so glad.
Okay, here's a question for you. How do you use this geometry to manifest things in your life?
Oh, God, that is such a cool question. I have a very direct answer. One of the things that I do, again, I'm totally biased to drawing it because that's what I do. When you draw it, you can set intentions. You can actually work with what you want to manifest and revisit it at every single step of the geometry. And then you are just supercharging what you would like to do. You're supercharging your intention. That's one way. And with manifesting, I believe that I would say that it's also kind of the theme that I've kept revisiting is when you are bringing your awareness to the subtle and invisible realms, well, that's where your dreams and desires are, right? So if you're starting to say, I know that field is real, I know there's an intelligence out there that I can access, then you're affirming your belief in your ability to manifest. Your ability is so powerful. We don't even know. And so I'm so biased, sorry. Working with the geometry, creating that understanding of the field of information that you can then harness and access and focus on and intend and create. It's all part of the same thing where you're realizing how much more is out there. You're completely anchoring your multidimensional reality by your intentions, by your affirmations. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question aside from that first part with the drawing. Let me just make sure how the geometry can help with intention setting. I think you can also anchor your intentions in the natural world and use the patterns that you can find to remind you of your intentions. So what I mean, for example, is if you have an intention for inner peace and you anchor it to an interpretation of the natural world that highlights the phi ratio, that highlights that beautiful spiral. If you anchor your intention to that geometry and then look for it in nature because it's everywhere, then you will be reinforcing that your intention is everywhere and available and omnipresent, right? So when you associate your intentions with a geometry that already exists and that is ever present, then you'll be increasing the frequency and the likelihood of it happening. I think those are some nice succinct answers. This shape behind me, right, Sri Yantra, this thing is, I have 23 of these in my home, and I'm completely obsessed with this shape. And this shape is a portal. And working with intentions with this shape, supercharged. I also teach how to draw the Sri Yantra. And really, it's just about meditating and speaking your intention into the field. I think that's what I can say, although there's so much more to say. Awesome question.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know, Nadi actually created that right behind her right there. She's an amazing artist.
It did. It's 6 feet by 6 feet. It's very big.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, you're muted.
You cut out on my end, Nadi. Say that again for me.
Oh, I was saying that this piece is 6 feet by 6 feet, and it was not easy to do. And that's the 23 of them in my house. I just draw them obsessively, and it's completely activating, and I love it. But Neil's been here, and he saw it, and that's testimony.
Yeah. Do you have the bandwidth to commission commission pieces yet, or no?
Absolutely. No, that is one of my favorite things to do. I can't really commit to a size this big. It was very difficult, but I got it framed. You saw last time it was on the floor. But yes, I love doing commissioned work and talking more about that with people for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the question here, do you think someone can heal themselves from drawing geometry?
Oh my God, absolutely. God, these great questions. So I mentioned early on that I have this beautiful human in one of my classes. I have a whole semester long of sacred geometry at Portland Community College. And she came on and she said, I've just had a massive brain surgery. I'm recovering from a traumatic brain injury, and I'm believing that the geometry can help me restructure my brain. And having seen her over several months, it has, in part because it aligns the hemispheres of your brain, and it creates a what's the word? I have syntropy in my mind, but it creates a symmetry and gets things back online in the way that they are originally. So that's with her brain, but it is true for your entire body. one of the things that I actually encourage people to do a lot is to draw the geometry, or just get an image that you really relate to and either put it under your pillow at night and do some dream work with it, or actually work with it on a part of your body. And it can influence that way. It can also contribute to healing, restabilizing and restructuring your system, right? Like you can structure water with the geometry, and we are 70+% of water. And so you can, back to the intentions, you can envision a certain geometry that can harmonize your system. Gosh, that is such a complex question and beautiful one. And there's so many answers. Let me just breathe and make sure I'm not forgetting one. Gosh, there's so much I could say. But in general, like intention setting and working with frequency, using the geometry to work with frequency and sound is another way to do healing work. Like there it is, all of the sound frequencies and sound technologies of crystal bowls and, healing frequencies, hand pans, gongs, all of the sound healing and sound baths, they are using frequencies to harmonize your cells and bring them back into a state of balance. And so I highly recommend sound therapy, tuning forks. It's amazing work to harmonize your system.
Yeah, because the sand plate demonstration of sound frequency is the geometry. Every
Right.
sense that we have has a corresponding frequency sensor, right? Receptor. Visually, geometry, physical items. Even my ring right here, of course, on the subatomic level, is made out of geometrical shapes. So I'm looking at it, and the sound is the audible geometry. You know what I mean? And we now have ways to basically see that in physical form, right?
Right. Cymatics, really cool study of form, sound and form, sound and geometry. Highly recommend looking into cymatics. Very cool stuff.
Right, so Earthworth is asking, or is saying, super interested in Phi and Dodecahedron especially. Are there any documentaries that you recommend? But maybe even more than that, do you speak about that in your course? Where can you direct Earth to learn more about that?
Absolutely. Well, there's actually two specific classes. There's one on the Phi ratio on the online course, and there's one on the dodecahedron. But then I love, let's have a conversation, right? Because those two patterns, let's see, I dropped a thought in terms of focusing on those. And can you repeat that? There was something in there that I just dropped in promoting myself.
Yeah. So the dodecahedron of Phi geometry wants to learn more. Is there a documentary course? What do you recommend? Yeah.
That was it. There are so many incredible people that you could look into. I don't know, Neil, maybe you want to just put these in the chat. I'm sure some people know them, but Adam Apollo and his website, he's an incredible geometrist. I mean, my God, exponentially brilliant human, and the information that he carries. Let's see, Jeff Fitzpatrick and Scott Onstott, they have a organization called the Sacred Geometry Academy. Really wonderful resource. Also, the Resonance Science Foundation, Nassim Haramein's organization, beautiful human. Jonathan Quinton has an incredible course series as well. He's been doing this for decades, and he's created these incredible visual arts and ways of learning about the geometry. They're so wonderful. Highly recommend his course. Of course, Nassim Haramein and Adam Apollo has done some classes in Nassim's academy, and then I think there's a bunch of others, but those are my favorites. Marshall Lefferts, also with Resonance Science Foundation. He has a book. You should definitely get the book Cosmometry. It's an incredible resource. If it's not too awkward, I will go grab it so that you can see it. It's an incredible book. And so those are just some things, but there's so much online that's just YouTubes and downloads and information resources. So I know there's so much more, but we'll start with that.
All right, beautiful. I know there was one last question. So
one more resource, which is awesome. It's been around for about 10 years. Spirit Science is such a wonderful resource. I mean, they've got 12-minute, 16-minute vignettes, very, very digestible on like every single esoteric subject you could imagine. The Kabbalah, light bodies, the tree of life, Merkabas, astral travel, remote viewing, crystals, frequency, sound healing, anything you want. Spirit Science has a really user-friendly video on it too, and they've got an hour-long secret geometry video on it. It's a great resource.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah.
All right, Astral Light is commenting / asking, so not grammatically on point here. So I'm just going to kind of see what it's saying and kind of translate it a little bit. I think Astral is saying wanting to use stones and crystals, or Astral is using stones and crystals to make the geometry shape is one way other than drawing it. So putting it on Earth or using it in their spiritual practice. So can you comment on that a bit? Making geometrical shapes out of different stones and crystals?
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. That is such a great practice. Even if you're not drawing it, arranging crystals, like if you have, maybe you print off a seed of life and you're arranging crystals on certain points in the shapes, you are amplifying the harmonics of the shape, like exponentially. You're using the energies of the crystals to supercharge the geometry, which is then influencing your field. And again, back to the intentions, you can set intentions and amplify the geometry as well. And then you can work, labyrinths, you can work in natural settings, you can work in your garden, drawing out certain geometric patterns and, placing crystals. Different kinds of crystals have different intentions and abilities. And so, thank you so much for mentioning that. That is a wonderful, wonderful practice. Like if I was going to put crystals on the tree, I could put different points would hold the crystals, right? And I could put one in the center, and I could use this geometry and have the different shapes and points represent, put each different crystals on there. Then you can set the crystals with intentions. Beautiful suggestion. Absolutely, highly recommend that.
Last question here. Someone's asking about drawing classes. I know you've done them online before. Can we expect any more drawing classes online?
Absolutely. That would be a really great idea for me to get my act together and put some on my website. I will do that. Let's see. Some of the ones that I do that are standalones, I haven't done a full sequence. Maybe I'll offer that in the fall in terms of like in person, all of those 8 that I've done. I love to teach people how to draw the Sri Yantra. It's very fun. You can do it. It's no experience necessary. And then there's also the 64-star tetrahedron, the shape that we saw. You can draw that. It's really fun. Those are one-off classes that I do. And also the tesseract, the geometry of time travel. So I will hop off of this call and I will create a schedule. I just tend to go light in the summer months because people are out doing things. But I will put some things online. I'll put some geometry online, as well as, one of my favorites is the interspecies communication with whales and dolphins. I love to talk about the whales and dolphins and how they talk to us. And, so much of communication with other advanced civilizations is based in telepathy, right? And so as you're working with the geometry, you're actually activating some of those systems and creating your ability to speak with your guides, angels, advanced civilizations. So I'll do some whales and dolphins. I'll do some time travel. Maybe I'll do, there's a couple that I really enjoy. So thank you. I'll put them up. And Neil, did you get my website on there, the Galactic Rose Geometry?
Yeah, let me do that right now. Okay. Just Galactic Rose Geometry, right?
Yeah, Galactic Rose Geometry. And then that's also the YouTube channel. And I will spend tonight putting some classes together, and then you can just go online and the link will take you to an Eventbrite link and tell you about the class. But I would love to meet some new geometry friends. I have to tell you that sacred geometry, when I see someone who's into it and I follow some breadcrumbs of like, oh my god, I saw your tattoo, or I saw a video that you did about the geometry, it's like finding your people, because you've already got this really baseline appreciation of
straight up,
that there's more going on. And so I always love to meet people. I always love to connect people. You're shaking your head like that's super truth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's why I got this tattooed on me,
Yep, nice.
Reminder forever that we are geometry, and the ancients, like, it trips me out. daily that the ancients created geometry to represent how all physical things are created in this reality, which goes beyond that on how galaxies and nebulae are created and how everything's created through beautiful art, and just we're only kind of like uncovering right now the wisdom that they knew, but the way they tapped into this awareness, we can speculate in it as many different ways, but as we unraveling all of this information, it's just truly mind-blowing and so beautiful.
Right. And the thing is that like so many of our wisdom traditions knew this, right? Like if you look at the Hebrew tradition and the Hebrew lettering, each of them holds a frequency and its own vibration. Then when you're chanting and you're singing, you're activating those frequencies within yourself, and you're talking to God. It's touching God, right? It's touching those same principles, and learning how the geometry is woven through everything. And I want to bring it back to one more thing, like when you were just talking about the ancients and how learning how about the underlying intelligence of the universe. All of that, I believe, as do the whales and dolphins, all of that is leading us to not only unity consciousness, but you could use a different word, which is love, right? Like we've got to find this way of self-love. Here we're coming back to where we started, Neil. Like self-love is the way to lift your vibration, and then inherently that loving frequency can influence and impact and balance out so much density that's happening. So that's where it all ultimately is taking us. All of the traditions, all of the religions, it's getting to that harmonic of love.
The geometry within us, and the geometry within us that's distorted creates distorted experiences on earth. And as we harmonize with the vibration and frequency of love, compassion, gratitude, and just the frequencies that we can create that are harmonic, we can harmonize the geometry within us. And as that occurs, what happens externally? Well, the external reality is a reflection of the harmonic geometry within, right? And that's really, I got that from Nassim Haramein when I first watched him in 2001, like the external reality is a reflection of the division of the geometry within, and that's why we're just like, it all comes back down to the whole purpose of the inner work, us doing that work so that we can be the caretakers of the planet and each other.
Yeah. That was beautiful. We should just end there, but I was inspired. Nassim has he's the real deal, right? He's onto it. But also, Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, like those three guys really have it in terms of looking at your beliefs, looking at the larger intelligence that can be tapped, just to inspire the change. So just to put it out there, these are the folks that have helped me really expand my consciousness, and things are kind of nice. After a lot of work.
Straight up, huh? So, okay, before we close out here, final comments, inspiration, announcements. Anything else? Yeah, I'm just gonna drop a piece of gratitude. To be able to talk about this, to be able to share something that's made my life so extraordinary, to be able to connect with you, my dear brother, and just feel the uplift that happens through this subject, through everything that's related. I'm deeply grateful to be able to have these conversations and meet you all in one way or another, non-local connection. I'm super grateful for everybody, whenever you tap into this, for showing up and being open to new information. So thank you so much. Thank you, Nadi. And let's let everybody else know once more. I said it in the beginning. I love everybody, but I have a few favorite people. And Nadi, freaking favorite person, oh my God, I love you so much, Nadi. And I'm just so happy that we're friends and we're live in person friends, not just digital ones anymore, So you guys will see a lot more of Nadi. And you get the replay of this, guys. Watch this back. And we also have a few other videos of Nadi on our channel. One from the conference, the live conference that we put online. I forget which one it is now. But we have the crop circles one that's available on our YouTube channel. We have the whales and dolphins one that she spoke about just a little bit recently. You can go and check that out. If you're new to our channel or Alan Steinfeld's New Realities, please do go ahead and subscribe. And you can go to our website too, portaltoascension.org. Sign up there. You get thousands of hours of free presentations. Okay. And before we close out officially, I just want to show you some stuff. So yeah, go ahead, sign up, boom, 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 and you'll go ahead and get a username and password. You get access to it. It's like consciousness, binge watching conscious presentation, thousands of hours of presentation by speakers, by categories, and we're relaunching our website within 2 months with an iPhone app, Android app, Roku app. We're going next level with this awareness. We're even having a mystery schools. I know a lot of people tuning in right now are actually on Portal to Ascension already. We're launching a mystery schools. We're launching a course area where you can upload your own courses, like a Udemy for Portal to Ascension. And the content, we're adding another 1,000 hours of free content, right? Like beyond epic, really. Check it out. But one thing I want to tell you about right now that I'd love for you guys to come and tune into, and the reason why you're not seeing these thumbs is because my internet here is terrible, is on Tuesday this week, we are doing our free Heal the Divide online conference, okay? And even though, so this is free, so you can join the Zoom room by going to portalascension.org, online events, sign up, or you can just stay on YouTube and subscribe there on Alan's or Portal to Ascension, because we're gonna also be broadcasting it on all these platforms as well. And this is gonna be really awesome because it's something I've been thinking about for the last 2 years, 3 years even. And it's really about the fact that divide and conquer has been the name of the game for so long. And over the last few years, like, you know, I can get into the history of how it progressed and all that, but I'm not gonna do that right now. But over the last few years, the divide and conquer agenda went even more hardcore with the ideological split. We got to realize that we have more in common with each other than we have that's separate. And a lot of these ideologies that we adopt from people that claim to, have our same belief systems, they really don't. You know, they have their own agendas when it comes to it all. And ultimately, you and I have more in common with each other than those that claim to control us. So this event isn't going to go into the agenda, even though I'll probably drop a few of those things here and there as I'm emceeing with Michelle Anderson. But this is going to go into tools and techniques on how to hang out and sit with people you disagree with, interpersonal communication, conflict management, family members that don't have got something done to their bodies that you didn't get done. And you need to figure out how you can be in peace with them. Family members and friends that don't agree with you, no longer communicating with them. So it's one thing of like somebody's creating pain and trauma in your life and you need to maybe separate from them. But it's another thing of when we have these phony belief systems that have been imposed upon us. And now we're creating more of a split that really creates a separation when ultimately the only way to true salvation is through unity. Okay. So this event is going to be about that Heal the Divide online conference starting 9 a.m. just in Sunday. So in 2 days from now. All right. So come check it out or stay on the YouTube. And it's going to be fun. Okay. So see you guys there. And that's it from me here at Portal to Ascension. Would like to say to you all, thank you so much. I love you all very, very much. Appreciate you being here on this platform. And thank you so much, Nadi. I love you.
Love you too. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.